Hey there, Spiceheads. It's Emily with Spiceworks. Thanks for tuning in today and joining us on another Spiceworks Partner webinar. Data is the oil of the 21st century. But what do you do with it? Brought to you by Red Level, Dell, and Intel. Today's presenters are Rob Pisani, VP of Cloud and Technology Solutions, and Tim Brock, Enterprise Solutions Architect. So, Rob, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, thank you, Emily. Hello, everybody. This is Rob Pisani with Red Level Network. We're going to get started with today's presentation with a quick trivia question here, and hopefully you guys can guess it right without Googling it. Who said the value of an idea lies in the using of it? So the person who said it was Thomas Edison. He was referring to the practical application of his inventions, such as the electrical light, recorded sound, motion pictures. Today, the same can be said about data. So imagine, guys, that you're a company that provides critical healthcare services, operating in a highly regulated environment. Most of your staff of several hundred caregivers work alone on location with patients. You have financial, regulatory, and legal risks that are enormous. You need rapid access to accurate data in the field to minimize risk, streamline your operations, and maintain the quality of the services that you provide. But you have no fast, efficient way to transfer that data between your remote employees or your main office. That means your risk increases and your efficiency and opportunities could be lost. There is a technological answer to your company's problem, but in order to succeed, they'll have to be planned, implemented, secured, and maintained absolutely perfect. And that's where we come in. That's where Red Level comes in. We created an easy-to-use, customized application that let the caregivers provide real-time activity and billing reporting from the field at the client's home through their office using smart devices such as tablets and smartphones. For the first time ever, the company had real-time visibility into those employee activities. Access to critical field data is needed to operate at peak efficiency for this client, and that helped them reduce their risk, operate more efficiently, streamline admin tasks, and improve their overall financial integrity, as well as maintain the highest standard of patient care with that data being streamed live to the caregiver's devices. It also gave them a solid foundation that they needed to grow and thrive from in a complex, complicated, competitive industry. Now, this company had a operational challenge that required a technological solution. But more than anything else, it needed business insight, strategic capability, and IT expertise to pull it off successfully. Ultimately, the solution wasn't hardware or software. It was the thinking behind them. That kind of thinking is what Red Level does best. We understand that technology challenges are real business challenges. The technology and business landscapes change fast all the time, and it takes knowledge, strategic ability, and the insight to stay ahead of the curve. As we've seen over and over again in many cases like this one, rethinking the way that business is done and the way that we use technology has the power to deliver business results. So at Red Level, we believe it isn't enough for technology to be new. It has to be game-changing in order to make business sense. Well, what does that mean? It means it has to deliver substantial improvements in the way that you do things and the results that you achieve as an organization. In order to make business sense, technology has to improve your efficiency, save you time, increase your accuracy, and most of all, guys, make you money. That's the kind of technology that we care about, and that's the kind of technology we work with. Game-changing technology solutions that deliver solid, measurable business outcomes. At Red Level, we have 3 lines of our business. Those lines are business consulting or business solutions, which is our consulting arm that wraps around business intelligence and analytics, business productivity, process automation, those sort of technological requirements from a business standpoint. Cloud and Technology Solutions, which this one's near and dear to my heart as I oversee our CTS team here. We're more data center focused on the consulting services. So we're the engineers and architects that are walking out the door to meet with you guys and discuss current projects, current business requirements, and also rethink that business or rethink that IT to help get that more strategic solution out of what we have from a hardware, software solution standpoint. Next is our managed services. We call it RedCare Plus. That is our managed service offering where we do disaster recovery as a service, hardware as a service, Office 365, etc. We also offer our MyCloud, which is also another branded hosting solution where we host client environments within our cloud and have multiple data centers that are replicated throughout the state of Michigan here for any sort of technological need that if you want to go off premise and go into the cloud, but maybe not necessarily go to a rack space or something like that where you want to keep it locally. That's where we come in. That gives you a little bit about Red Level Networks, or Red Level, and who we are and what we do. But enough about Red Level. I'm going to bring Tim on here so he can kind of start slathering on the good stuff. Tim, take it away.
Thanks, Rob. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Tim Brock. I am the Enterprise Solutions Architect from Dell, and my role is to support channel partners that are dedicated to selling and evangelizing and helping customers do more with Dell. We are focused more than ever on assigning Dell resources to our top partners across the country. So like I said, my job is really to help partners and customers better understand the technology, and it fits perfectly into the mission of Red Level as an organization, as a valued business partner. So thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to give you guys a walkthrough of basically our perspective on our storage portfolio, specifically around Compellent. When was the first 15K hard drive released to market? So the answer to the question is the first 15K drive was actually released by Seagate way back in 2000. So February to be exact, and so over 16 years ago was the 15K drive. It was available at the time in 18 and 36 gigabyte options, which is pretty incredible when you think about where we are today. We have 15K drives upwards of 1.5 terabytes. But the point is, we haven't actually, the industry hasn't made the 15K drives been any faster. Has it gotten larger? Absolutely. But to drive performance, you still have to add a lot of 15K spindles. Just to give you a kind of a point of reference, a 15K drive spins on average about 100, it'll give you about 160 to 180 IOPS per drive. The SSD drive, just to give you a comparison, in my laptop will deliver about 3,500 IOPS and an SSD form factor. If you haven't been reading the news, about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, Samsung actually announced the release of a 250,000 IOP 15 terabyte SSD drive, single drive. So what's the point here? At Dell, we really look at the 15K and even the 10K drive as technology that's on the fast track at this point for being obsolete. Do we find uses for it? Absolutely. But with the price being driven down in the marketplace of SSD, we're really using those 15 and 10K drives differently than we ever have before, and they're really only designed to replace drives that may fail in existing environments. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about the general perspective of Dell and how we actually look at storage, and not just storage specifically. If you're not aware, for those of you that may not be a Dell customer or haven't been following the news, Dell is the only end-to-end solution provider of IT hardware in the world. That means that we can sell you anything from high-end laptops, enterprise level, consumer grade, printers, certainly entry-level network switching, all the way through storage, what we call our enterprise solutions, which would be storage, server, networking, and then those pre-configured solutions. I'm going to tell you at the end a website that you can take a look at. You can see some of those in detail, much better than the Dell.com website. But really, the kind of the tenets of our kind of the overarching perspective we take when looking at the enterprise for our customers is really around three specific things, and it's all tied to the workload. So a little quick history lesson from history background on me. I was actually an IT director for about 10 years before I came to Dell. And with that in mind, I've been in the chairs of a lot of you folks on the call. So I understand the difficulty in answering user expectations, certainly budgeting, trying to deliver solutions that are specific to each one of your organizations. And what we're finding is that many of our customers are in this evolution point in IT, which is the admin in its formally, if you defined it 5 years ago, the IT admin really is evolving into an IT architect. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that really when you buy a server from Dell or from HP or from whomever, or a storage platform, a lot of the hardware is from Intel or Seagate or Western Digital or whoever's selling those components. The differentiators come in the intelligence of the software, the manageability, those types of things. But again, focused on software. And at Dell, we start with the end user requirements, which would be the workloads that are ultimately what we as IT professionals are measured by, and how quickly can an end user stand up a new environment if they need it? How quickly can they get that response from IT? Or are we getting enough IOPS in this specific application? So we really focus at Dell on three things. Optimization of performance, which is, again, at the end of the day, the only thing that the end users care about. Secondly would be price. And historically, Dell has been, unfortunately, I'm a big Dell fan, guys. I call myself the biggest Dell bigot because I really think we have great technology. But there was a time where we developed a potential negative perception with a lot of enterprise folks as being the cheap guy, the cheap servers, the cheap whatever, insert, technology after cheap. That isn't necessarily a case anymore because we're now selling on value because we feel like never before has Dell been at a point where we have truly industry-recognized enterprise solutions that we can offer our customers. Now, that's not to say that we're going to be the most expensive or the least expensive, but when we're trying to optimize price with performance, we're able to do that, A, because we're an end-to-end solution provider. In the storage platform, it's because we do things very differently with Compellent than anybody else, and I'm going to talk about some of those details at a relatively deep level here in a few minutes. And finally, once we optimize kind of the price with performance, we then can drive down the cost per gig or cost per terabyte, depending on how you look at that, which is really one of the key things that most customers look at. At the end of the day, all of us have the requirement of going towards our management and getting approval for whatever it is we want to purchase. And we have to be able to say, listen, this is a long-term investment that we can make, and the return on that investment and the total cost of ownership are in line or less than any of the other competitors. Then we can really discuss the technical differentiators that make Dell unique in the storage marketplace. So the next slide you'll see here kind of talks about a few of the high-level key areas that really make Compellent special. So the idea that we have, if you go back and pull back the covers a little bit, traditional storage has been around for a long time, and it was really, you define a RAID group, and you determine how many drives in that RAID group will deliver the number of IOPS, and then you attach a set of workloads or volumes to that LUN, if you will. And ultimately, that management, back in the days of having a SAN administrator, really was about making sure capacity was always available, performance was where it was needed to be, and as a result, you had full-time SAN administrators in even medium-sized environments just to make sure the SAN was performing as needed. And when you had to add storage or move, get better performance, you would literally have to create multiple RAID groups, move the data around, and it was really a cumbersome process. So Compellent took a different perspective. There was a company called Xiotech a while back some folks that worked at Xiotech who actually had a very robust and loyal client base. That was a storage platform still around today, but they were not growing, and these guys decided they wanted to take the best of Xiotech and even make it better, because at the time there were really only a couple of players in the storage area network space, and that was EMC, Xiotech, and a handful of others. Today, by the way, there are over 600 storage manufacturers out there, if you can believe that. It's pretty intense on the number of options customers have. However, so back to the point here, those folks from Xiotech went out and they polled all of their best customers and asked, what would make a perfect platform for you? And they took the Xiotech idea and just expanded on it. One of the things was being able to do things automatically, not having to do all of those immediate, manually work-intensive type moving around data sets. The other thing was really, how do we make the cost of ownership of the product line really look more appealing to a customer? So the idea of the forklift upgrade, if you will, where every 3 to 5 years you go and you have to replace the entire array with a new array. How do we get rid of that? And so some things that came out of that were perpetual licensing. Perpetual licensing is built into the Compellent platform, which, by the way, Dell acquired Compellent in 2011, just a little history note there for you. And then from there, the idea of tiering came out of that whole idea, that conversation, which means how do we move data? And really, I always tell customers, if you remember one thing about Compellent, remember this: our focus is on data locality or data placement at the block level. So making sure the data is where it needs to be to optimize that price with performance. So on this slide, you'll see a few other things. Manageability, I'll show you at the very end of the slide deck, kind of a brief introduction to the interface of Storage Center, the Enterprise Manager. Virtualization of RAID. There is no defining a RAID, for example. You literally will create a volume based on capacity that you required and then tie that volume to a specific host. Once that's complete, the rest of it is done by the intelligence of the software. And again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's really about the software. So what you'll see now is we're actually going to, Rob's going to go through a handful of actual case studies where Red Level has engaged with customers, solved some of their business problems, and explained how Compellent fit into that overall process. So here's our first one, so I'll turn this back over to Rob for now.
All right, thanks, Tim. Our first case study today is an IP law firm based here in Michigan. It's a 500-user law firm that one of their biggest pains outside of the bullet points that you see inside of the slides here was they had power issues based on where they are currently located for their headquarters. And they're a kind of, I don't want to say data center decentralized, but they have locations throughout the United States with mini data centers or closets with some switching and some additional storage and servers located at. And really what they wanted to do is lower that total cost of ownership of all the architectural solutions that they own in terms of hardware, software, end user support, etc. So really what they wanted to do is take advantage of centralizing all of the infrastructure. Well, you can't exactly centralize all the infrastructure when you're having power outages when it slightly rains or lightning strikes 20 miles away. So what we had to do is kind of think outside of the box. Instead of building something locally on premise, we actually helped to move them into a co-location, which in turn also offered substantial power savings to them because now they're not having to cool their own on-premise data center, which they currently had multiple racks in a large room. So in addition to that, some of the other issues they're obviously experiencing were mixed servers and physical server sprawl. So they're a virtualized environment. However, most of the equipment they had was outdated, and it couldn't handle the capacity that they needed. And the other portion of the physical server sprawl is they were buying rack-based servers. So not a bad thing, not a totally off way to go, but however, when you're starting to get up in upwards of 10, 20 physical servers, now you're taking lots of use of rack space. So what we did is obviously think outside of that box and come up with performance solutions run on Dell M1000 series blades, and also PowerEdge servers inside of there, which are the Blade series architecture. They currently existed with running EqualLogic storage. However, nothing bad with that, but because it's a frameless architecture, whenever they needed to add more performance or capacity, they had to go out and buy a whole new EqualLogic chassis, new drives, and obviously you have more U filling up on that depending on which model they went with. So again, more rack space, more power, more cooling, etc. So we started turning them over to the Dell Compellent storage line, and Tim's going to talk to you about the one that they specifically purchased, which is the SC4020. And most of these, I know there was a question in regards to EqualLogic and isn't Compellent for large enterprises, and not to steal Tim's thunder here, but it's not. There's different lines of Compellent, and the one that they purchased, being the 4020, is kind of like that middle of the row Compellent. So they really needed to increase their performance on the VDI, which is where the Compellent really came into play because of those hot blocks that they can move their VDI sessions to. So basically, we kind of did the reverse. Instead of having like a headquarters and then replicating maybe DR to co-location, we actually did the opposite so that their production environment would actually stay up and be completely stable. And we used headquarters as their DR location, utilizing technologies from VMware with Site Recovery Manager and using storage replication, which I know Tim will talk a little bit more about potential Compellent and EqualLogic replication capabilities as well. So I'm going to turn this back over to Tim, who will go inside of the Compellent a little bit more here and give you guys some more details.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm going to pick up the pace here a little bit, guys, because I realized I took a little while in explaining the foundation of Compellent and kind of the history. And I see there's several questions. I'm going to try to save most of those till the end. And if I haven't answered them by then, I will absolutely, we'll make sure we have time here at the end. So really, this slide, over the kind of the slide purpose here is to really illustrate to a customer the whole focus of data, what we call data progression, also known as tiering in the industry. And really, the big benefit of the auto-tiering process is intelligent data placement. And I mentioned earlier, if you take one thing away from Compellent, it should be that the focus of data placement is absolutely critical to ensuring that optimization of cost, price, performance, etc. So as we go forward, I'll show you a few additional slides on some actual technology. But keep in mind, the idea, it's right data in the right place at the right time for the right cost. That's really the summation of Dell Compellent. The idea is that all hot data gets stored on the fastest media, and you'll see that here in another slide. For example, all information gets, new writes come in at RAID 10 on the fastest drives in the array. So what does that mean? That means we're always delivering top performance to those workloads that are requiring it. Also, the active data, the data is analyzed in a metadata table, and the idea behind that is, as we understand the access patterns of that block, each block by default, we are able to put the data that's needed on either the highest, fastest performing drives or those less active blocks on much lower cost, much higher capacity drives in a separate tier. And then what happens over time is the automation that occurs, that goes through the process on a daily basis, it gets fine-tuned so that over the first 30, 60 days, you're really seeing very little data moving up and down those tiers. And again, that all plays into the idea that we're making sure that data is where it needs to be when it needs to be there. And that's what this next slide demonstrates, is the data progression auto-tiering process that Compellent brings into the mix. So really, if you're looking at this in a nutshell, Tier 1 is always going to be your highest performing, generally your SSD drives. That's why we don't really see the 15K drives used that often, because Dell offers 3 different types of SSD drives: write-intensive, premium read-intensive, and then we are also first to market with the largest capacity enterprise SSD drives, which we call our mainstream read-intensive. Those are 3.8 terabytes in a single 2.5-inch SSD. That delivers performance beyond anything that a spinning drive is going to deliver, and that drive is actually priced at the same price per gigabyte as the 15K spinning drive. So all of those things give us a lot of options to give you as a customer, not to mention things like replication, snapshots, and other enterprise-type features that you'd expect in an array. Those are also available within the Compellent line. Another step that we take in optimization and data placement, not only do we do tiering between different drive types, but we also do virtualized RAID tiering on the same physical drives. Why do we do that? Because, again, we're focused specifically on the performance and the access patterns of the blocks that get put onto the array. It's application agnostic, so whatever the application is calling for, we're able to deliver a very, very high performance at a much lower cost than anybody else in the marketplace, and that's what you see on this slide. Within a single drive set, even on the top tier, which would be RAID 10, we call Tier 1, you might have a RAID group, again, all virtualized, nothing you created, based specifically on the actual access patterns of that data. You might have a RAID 10 stripe on some drives, and you might have a RAID 5 set on the same physical drives. And then as the data is finally written, committed to disk, then it will be put, based on its activity pattern, will be put on the right tier, and then it could be at any given time RAID 10, RAID 5, or RAID 6 for reads. So just depending on the tier, we're able to optimize that and virtualize it, again, back to the point earlier, which is software-based. So that's where the intelligence comes from. One of the solutions in the case studies that Rob are going through that was deployed was our mid-range Dell Storage platform, which is, so all Dell Storage is, on the Compellent side, it starts with this SC. EqualLogic is PS. This is Storage Center. So storage, the SC4020 was our first hybrid EqualLogic array, and I saw a question on this, so I'm going to briefly just talk a little bit toward that question around the idea that the question is Compellent specifically for enterprise and EqualLogic for SMB? Well, the answer to that is no. You could really use both on any size environment. Just to give you a little bit of an idea on how Dell has strategized over storage, the decision was made a couple years ago to move EqualLogic and Compellent and merge those into a single platform, and the decision long-term was made to go to Compellent. The reason for that is there were many enterprise features, including scalability and some things I will talk about, like live volume and replication, that was done differently. The way we do RAID tiering and just general data progression was not available on EqualLogic. But there are a lot of great things that customers love about EqualLogic as well. So we started to merge the platforms, and the 4020 was the first hybrid. It actually took the Compellent software, but it was using the iSCSI stack from EqualLogic, which everyone knows that's the best in the industry. So this array was really designed, because we had the high-end 8,000, now the 9,000. This was designed for those medium-sized deployments. But again, this expands up to 3 petabytes, but you can purchase an SC4020 with 6 drives in it, of any drive type. So it's very scalable, scales 1 drive at a time, which EqualLogic, as we all know, doesn't do that. You have to buy another enclosure. So some of those features is why we also decided to stay with Compellent. Just to give you a perspective, this guy that expands to 3 petabytes that you're seeing on your screen, in that exact same footprint, we can put those 3.8 3.8 terabyte 2.5-inch drives, which there are 24 slots in there. And in that single 2U, you can get 90 terabytes of all flash. So again, it's just completely customizable based around your needs and your performance. So it's a very, very great solution. It also integrates very nicely into any other SE that you deploy. You're able to manage all of these SEs from the same interface and replicate between them and a lot of other features as well. Here's just some of the expandability. We have multiple form factors. That's how we get to that, the 3 petabyte number. Drive mix is fine. You can do, 15K SSD, 7200. But the most common are 1 to 2 types of SSDs, and then fill out capacity. That's for IOPS. And then fill out capacity for the tier 3, really with no tier 2. And fill out capacity with the lower cost 7200 RPM, either 4 or 6 terabyte. And you can see in that 280, that is an enclosure that will support up to 504 terabytes in a 5U form factor. So it's a very, very great solution for if you need ultra dense deployment. So next question. Hopefully, I don't need to give you 30 seconds on this one, but who was the first vendor to have auto tiering? And for a bonus, when was it released? So I'm going to assume that we don't need too long to think about this one and move on. The answer is Compellent. And actually, it was Compellent way before Dell purchased the company, which was in 2011. They released auto tiering and made the industry rethink how tiering had to be done and started adding it to their footprint in 2005. So Compellent, their heritage is very strong in changing the way the industry looks at storage. So I'll turn this back over to Rob for our next case study.
Our next case study is as a healthcare client. Their business pains were sort of similar to the last client that we showcased. They had some performance issues on their current EqualLogic with no SSDs, but their scenario was just slightly different. So they were actually at a co-location and at their headquarters, and they split that. So they put mission-critical stuff at the co-location, and then everything else was kind of at headquarters. However, they put a full building generator on their building from a healthcare standpoint because they need to run 24/7 from all their mobility workforce. And really, we brought all that back on premise. When we did that, their EqualLogic couldn't keep up with all the 1,300 user mobile workforce that was having connectivity issues, getting and responding to the data that they needed. So what we did is we put in the Compellent with SSD drives, which Tim's going to talk a little bit about the SCV 2020 a little more here after this. And what that allowed them to do is have a lot of their hot data on the SSD, as well as be able to grow as their data needs grow without the EqualLogic portion of it where you had to replace chassis and stuff. So again, their data center decentralized and sprawling. They have multiple sites around the country here. And with 1,300 mobile workers, this is one that definitely needed some performance inside of there. Their WAN links were a little unstable as well, and we fixed that with some WAN optimization devices as well. So kind of go back through here, the PowerEdge R-Series servers and the Compellent was one of the ones that we brought in. So we brought in some new models of R-Series servers to help increase the workload on there. And then bringing in the new Dell N-Series core access layer iSCSI switches, so really splitting those out. Again, when they were decentralized, a lot of that traffic was not really pushing their on-premise switches. And then the other thing that we brought in place here was Dell Aperture for backups and replication. And they're also taking advantage of the Aperture Rapid Recovery feature at one of their locations in Chicago, and that allows us to spin up some of their virtual environment over there in the event of a DR as well. And there's other DR capabilities that we have built into here, but really kind of sticking to the more storage focus on this. So if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer it. I'm going to turn this back over to Tim now to kind of talk a little bit more about the SCV 2020 and some flash optimization.
Thanks, Rob. So, guys, we talked a lot about the different product lines that we have, and I mentioned auto tiering, so I'm going to briefly just touch on this. And if you want to get a demo or a follow-up after this meeting, we're happy to go into more detail. We're coming up on 20 minutes available time here. I want to be sensitive to everyone's needs. And I did cover this to some degree. It's really about having 3 different SSD offerings. And again, we get customers all the time that will ask us, hey, I want to quote for 100,000 IOPS. Well, it's basically generally defined by their thoughts and their expectations or requirements. At the end of the day, our average customer at 95th percentile utilization is around about 7,000 to 9,000 IOPS. And the average overall is about 4,000 IOPS. And that's across the board for any size environment. So think about what I mentioned earlier. In a single SSD, we can deliver about 3,500 to 4,500 IOPS per drive. So we can blow that number out with 6 drives in the first tier, and then all capacity gets built out from the lower cost, higher capacity 7,200 RPM drives. Again, we talked about virtualization, thin provisioning, and the dynamic capacity software component of Storage Center. Basically, think of it this way: when you create a volume in Compellant, it allocates and maps that volume in the array overall, but it actually doesn't consume that data. And it literally takes about 6 to 8 seconds to create a volume in Compellant in 3 steps. There is no RAID configuration. There is no consideration of how many drives do I need to support the IOPS in this workload. It's all done by Compellant automatically, and that dynamic capacity process helps with that, because even though a Windows server, for example, might see the allocated 200 gigs or 1 terabyte of capacity, Compellant's only going to write data to the physical drives on the array as data gets written to it. So you get better performance overall because you're not using space for allocation of data that isn't written, but you're also able to buy fewer drives than you might have initially thought. So that lowers your cost as well. So we have, I'm going to jump 2 slides. Yeah, so some of the questions around, the idea of EqualLogic being SMB and Compellant being enterprise. The next release, I mentioned the 4020, but the next release of our real SMB type products or general workload focus, maybe you're a large organization, but you have a remote site and you don't need an SC8000 or even SC4020. We have the SCV2000 series. Now, a couple of caveats here. Same software is running on it. Expandability is very, very good. We can put the same types of drives so we can deliver IOPS and performance. We just don't offer the same support, the support mechanisms, which is what we call Copilot. This is supported through standard Pro support, which if you're a Dell server customer, network customer today, you're familiar with that. And it also doesn't do full data tiering, data progression. We can't progress between drives. However, that RAID tiering that I talked about, we can do RAID tiering on the same types of drive. So the cost point on this is much more affordable if you're looking for just lots of capacity and high performance, but it's not a full-featured enterprise solution, although it performs very, very well, and if it's sized right, it may be the right solution for you. We have expandability here, so you notice we have the up to 672 terabytes of raw capacity in a single SC180 enclosure. So very, very large growth capabilities here, and it's all by adding disks, not additional controllers. All of our storage, our Compellant platform is powered by Dell powered servers. Those are the controllers. So that puts us in a very, very good performance perspective. So we're just adding drives, whereas EqualLogic, again, you're adding drives and the enclosures simultaneously. So there's a cost there. And we'll go to our next case study.
Yep, thanks, Tim. This is our final case study, probably one of my favorite case studies here. We've had a financial services client now for over 10 years, and they used to primarily be just an HP shop. However, we've had the pleasure of including this client in many Dell opportunities, meetings, so on and so forth. But most importantly noted, Dell every year has an event called Dell World. It happens in Austin, Texas every October. But we were able to take the clients down there and really get them ingrained into all the advancements in enterprise solutions that Dell has made over and above any competition in the industry. And in addition to that, Dell also has a solution center located in Chicago. It also has all the devices from client to enterprise level gear inside of there that you can go in there and they'll especially mold some solutions around there for you. With the advancements in enterprise capabilities, this really won the client over to really take a hard look at Dell and the solutions that they have. Some of their current pain points that they had inside of the HP side were lifecycle management and updating and the total cost of ownership, because everything was so decentralized from an HP tool standpoint, and really bringing in the Dell focus was around Dell management capabilities that stems from single pane of glass of their stand that integrates with servers, et cetera. That kind of really gives you that real simple pane of glass that also integrates with their virtualization environment as well. So they can do a lot more in less time and look in a lot less places. Some of their other performance issues that they had were based on 1 gig. So the current solution that we put in place was taking advantage of the advanced technology inside of the 10 gig. So we're 10 gig front end, 10 gig back end, Dell PowerEdge 13th generation servers. And from the amount of virtual machines that they have, we were able to get some beefier PowerEdge 13th generation servers in there and really make that really advanced and pretty beefy and big. So one of the other options, or one of the opportunities we had, is that they're also looking to red level, this client is, to be part of our cloud-based disaster recovery as a service that we offer. So going with the Dell Compellent inside of coming down in 2017, they're actually going to be replicating to us, in which Tim will talk a little bit on the next slide here about live volume. I don't want to steal a thunder, but we have the opportunity to now have their production environment replicated with a live volume capabilities into our data center. So I'm going to turn this back over to Tim here. Again, if there's any questions regarding other stuff inside of these, I'm more than happy to answer them for you.
Thanks, Rob. And we're wrapping up here shortly, guys, so thanks for hanging in with us. One of the technologies that helped us, again, I always like to talk how we were able to take out a HP customer, but it's even better when that customer has been an HP customer for 30 years and decides that Dell is the right platform for them and who they are today. And one of those is the technologies is the live volume. What live volume is a industry-leading, because of cost, performance, certainly, but ease of deployment and management. It's a software-based tool. Again, you'll hear that term a lot with us, even though we are a hardware manufacturer. It's all software-based. That's where the brains are separate us from everybody else. It essentially gives you the ability to, under the covers, we have replication already built into Compellent from site to site. When you add live volume, which is a very low-cost software add-on, it gives you the ability to auto failover in either async or synchronous volume. So it's all based on volume. So for example, if you're a VMware customer and you have a volume that's a data store that contains all of your virtual machines, that can be a volume presented to live volume. And ultimately gives you the ability, in a catastrophic failure, all the host connectivity and user connectivity can be redirected to a secondary site in real time with literally zero downtime. And we do that between the 8000 and the 4000 series, and additionally the 9000, which is our newest 13th generation high-end controller. But certainly all of those work together in federation. And the uniqueness there is, again, it's software-based. It's very, very easy to install. It's low cost to add to the licensing of your array. And it gives you, with the new version of 7.0, a couple of things come with that. So SC 7.0 came out about May 15th-ish. And what that gave you is things like quality of service, improved, we already had it, but now we have improved deduplication and compression across wire for replication when we have not only just basic replication, but certainly when you have live volume. It added auto failover with built-in SRM capabilities into your VMware environment. Hyper-V is absolutely supported. It is all virtualized environments only, so keep that in mind. But the idea here is it gives you the ability to have essentially active data centers, which stretch cluster support in the VM world. at a very low cost, very easy to deploy and manage. So it's a great solution. The other thing that helped us with in the last case study was our ability to deploy the true. This was a financial institution that required SED, which a lot of people didn't even realize Dell offers, but self-encrypting drives. For customers that are requiring workloads that you can't walk up to an array and take the drives out and go plug it in somewhere else and extract the data, we have full security and compliance solutions around that, and it incorporates completely into the 4020 and the higher end arrays as well. So 140. The FIPS 140-2 security level certification. The federal government uses this. If you need more information, we're happy to talk about it. But this is available today, and it's by workload. So you could actually have self-encrypting drives for some workloads and still buy the less expensive drives for your non-mission critical, security sensitive workloads as well. So mix and match there, giving you a lot of options. The next question, how many gigabytes are in a zettabyte? This one I would be shocked if anyone didn't have to Google, since we can't see you, or can we? You don't know that for sure. This one I had to look up myself. The answer is nearly 1 trillion gigabytes. I read an article on this when I was preparing for the presentation today, and they talked about the days when we used to think of terabytes as being unreachable. Well, zettabytes are a common, especially when you're talking about large data pools. There's so much data being consumed out by end users. Just think of how much you do on Facebook or Instagram and those photos and where those go. We're going to have several zettabytes of data across the globe in any given day within the next 12 months. So it's kind of interesting when you think of that scale. A couple more slides to discuss here, guys, and we'll wrap up and open up for additional questions. The Federation, as I mentioned a little bit, we support the volume mobility is what we call it between any Dell solution when it comes to storage on EqualLogic or Compellent. It's built in. There's nothing extra you need for Compellent. So if you have all your Compellent arrays set up, those SE4020s fully federated with a 2000 and a 4000 and vice versa. The only caveat is the 2000 doesn't have that built-in federation. If you're an EqualLogic customer, and I know we have several of you on the phone, a couple of things. Dell, on a roadmap, we have new product development for EqualLogic through the end of 2018. So you will see new releases of firmware and upgrades and capabilities around the EqualLogic product line. Keep in mind, simultaneously, we're bringing a lot of those things over to the Compellent line as well. We have a new management tool called Dell Storage Manager. It was released at the same time the new operating system was released for Compellent about a month ago. It's not generally available, but if you have a need for it, reach out to myself or to Rob. We can get a request in to get you that. It'll be generally available in the next 30 days or so. But what that gives you the ability to do, guys, is really cool. You can not only manage EqualLogic and Compellent in the same interface, but you can also replicate between an EqualLogic and a Compellent. So why do I tell you that? If you're an EqualLogic customer thinking, do we expand our EqualLogic environment or do we move over to Compellent? We are currently offering those customers what we call the Equal Loyalty Program that we can get you more information on. But it incents you to either decision you make is going to be best for you, but you'll get some incentive to stay on that platform. If you are a customer that's EqualLogic and chooses to move to a Compellent platform, you don't have to throw out your EqualLogic. You can now use Dell Storage Manager to replicate between those two platforms and re-provision those EqualLogic. Maybe that's your DR site or non-mission critical production. But the idea is those interfaces are already running and they're supported. So that's a big step in the right direction. My last slide is this. This is a couple of screenshots, of Enterprise Manager. This is the tool by default that comes with the storage center, any Compellent you buy. Again, managing through the entirety of your storage platform, all models, 2000 all the way up to 9000. And When you tie in, you put Dell Storage Manager over top of that, you even get some added features. So our call to action would be a couple of things. If you're interested in a demo and you're in Michigan, kind of the Midwest, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, please reach out to us. We'd love to come on site and visit with you and walk through some things. But if you're remote, we can still do those things as well. We just do it through a conference bridge or something like that with some video conferencing. We also have a free product tool that's called Dell Performance Analysis and Collection Kit, or DPAC. If you've never run a DPAC, it's completely hardware agnostic, but it does a workload analysis, not just IOPS, but performance of actual specific workloads and volumes in your environment. That is a free tool, runs for about 24 hours, well, exactly 24 hours. Very low impact to your in fact, nearly zero impact to your servers, except the one that you're running it on. It's like a 0.5% processor increase. That data, then, we can help analyze and give you ideas on how you might be able to improve those specific workloads, and especially if you're looking to size out a new storage area network, that's the tool that we'd ask you to start with. So those two call to actions, and then finally, a website I said I would mention early in the presentation is ESG, so that's Enterprise Solutions Group, VR, Virtual Rack, that's all together, so esgvr.dell.com. That will give you a link to a virtual rack of all of our enterprise solutions, including Compellent, servers, FX2, networking, anything you're looking for, and it's got a lot better technical data for us IT folks than the general Dell.com website. So again, thank you for your time, and we'll open it up for any additional questions.
All right, great. So we've got a few questions here, but get your questions in and we'll try and get those answered live or take them offline. First question is from Bill. Can Compellent interface use EqualLogic boxes if we migrate?
So I'm going to take that one. I'm assuming that if you choose Compellent, you have EqualLogic. If that's not correct, go ahead and add some notes there. But the answer is yes. You can migrate. We use a tool that's built into Compellent called Thin Import. And that Thin Import process, you would connect it to your EqualLogic and basically just pull that data across as long as those two had physical connectivity, meaning they could, IPs could connect and that kind of thing. And that would just import the data while the EqualLogic maintains connectivity. And then at cutover, you would then migrate your host. It's a little extra steps when it's an EqualLogic to Compellent than it is a Compellent to Compellent, but it still is very, very low impact to your overall end user. So the answer to that is yes.
All right, Brian wants to know, I haven't heard much on deduplication with Compellent. Is that a supported feature?
Great question, Brian. I appreciate that. The answer absolutely is yes. Historically, this gets into some more detail that I will not go into on this call, but if you want to have a discussion, certainly email or call me after this one. We historically did not have dedupe and compression. We released that about 2 years ago for our NAS environment, which is the FS8600 diskless gateway, NAS gateway for Compellent to give you a unified storage platform. In 7.0, compression and deduplication is natively available to Compellent, which is the current operating system. So the answer is absolutely deduplication and compression, but that would be a conversation we want to have when we size things to make sure that the trade-offs are not impacting workload performance, but they are a supported feature set out of the core.
All right, fantastic. So we do have some more questions, but we are all out of time. So thank you so much for that presentation, and hopefully everybody was able to learn a bit more. Special thanks to Red Level, Dell, and Intel for creating today's content and sponsoring this great event, and thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in today. We hope to see you back soon for another Spiceworks Partner webinar. But until then, stay safe and keep it spicy.
It's time to rethink business, and it's time to rethink IT.